Colleagues, if I ask you to take your seats, we'll just ask the deputy clerk to explain what's happened. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could just ask the deputy clerk to explain. We have a YouTube, but not Rogers, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the live stream for the City Council meeting has resumed on the Ottawa City Council and Conseil municipal d'Ottawa YouTube channels. Rogers TV Cable 22 and 23 are still having technical difficulties, but will resume broadcasting as soon as those are resolved. So the meeting may proceed, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Now, Councillor Harder, you had the floor when we started with the technical difficulties. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. As I was saying that it's, I've been to many meetings and this is, I think, the most bizarre one. And I think it is because almost all of the people who never support any investment in the city or any large project in the city always find a way to spit on it or to make excuses. Still talking about trees, still talking about parking garages, not talking about what this means. Can we never be happy and thankful and grateful for what a great city we have? Can we never do that?
Those are resolved.
You know, I represent over 70,000 people.
Okay, thank you.
I have had not one person call my office. I have received not one email about the things, the parking garage from my ward. I'm not talking about from some of yours, that it's, you know, maybe in councillors who know you are. The most bizarre one. You know who you are, but I have not. Almost, and I'm thinking that other councillors are like me, and the same can be said. But people are excited about this investment in their future health. Always find a way to spin on it or to the formula that makes, that dictates that this city has to contribute $500 million. Billion. It's not new. What is new is we have this great opportunity. The formula is what it is. $500 million in a city of 1 million and a little bit. And hopefully the surrounding area is doable. The faster it's doable, the faster we move forward and open up our new health trauma center, okay? And that's what's important. If it was as easy as just like having a lottery, why did we not do that before? Why didn't we have a lottery for the new central library? Why don't we do a lottery for Lansdowne? Why don't we do a lottery for LRT out to Kanata and Stittsville and Barrhaven? Why did we not for LeBreton Flats? All of these times, why would we now? Because you know what? We have excellent healthcare in this city with the hospitals and the foundations that we have already. And I have always, because I've been involved in fundraising, and you know, a few of you have been as well, I have always been aware of how difficult it was going to be for all of the other health services, whether it's Le Montfort, whether it's the Heart Institute, whether it's the Queensway Carleton, and on, when this challenge of $500 million, which I've known about for, I'd say, at least 6 years, came before us. And how would we ever be able to keep those very important health engines going with the fundraising that they needed? For Mother's Day, the Queensway Carleton was trying to raise money for baby incubators for their birthing unit. Baby incubators. So take your trees and your freaking parking lot and shove it where the sun doesn't shine. Because you know what? All that we're being asked to do is to give our very talented city chief financial officer the opportunity to do all she can, okay, to find out ways that we can contribute something that is acceptable to the people and the businesses in this city. And I say, that's what's before us. None of this other stuff. Quit sending me ludicrous emails about change the site. Have it near transit. What do you think about the transit that's already there? I mean, it's just gone crazy. So I will be voting for the staff recommendation, and I will be looking forward as a private citizen to the report that will come back. But I, as I always have been, will be helping the foundations of the medical centers in this city raise money. And I hope that all of you will cut the nonsense and start doing exactly that too. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Shintiri, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm taking a deep breath before what to say after that speech from Councillor Harder. Thank you, Councillor Harder. Well said. And colleagues, we spent quite a bit of time on committee, and we heard from the hospital, and we heard from the foundation, and we keep hearing, well, this is should be solely the provincial government responsibility. I'd like to remind everyone, and I think we are reminded every once in a while, there's only one taxpayer who pay for everything. Doesn't matter how you dice it, doesn't matter how you slice it, it's one taxpayer who paid this. This is not about the $150 million, Mr. Mayor. This is about whether we want this hospital or not. And this is about trusting our staff to come back with a creative way to deal with the $150 million. So I'm not voting for Councillor Meehan's motion. I'm supporting staff's motion, and I do believe our staff can deliver on a creative way to be able to move this file forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Does anyone else wish to speak who hasn't spoken? Well, colleagues, I'm going to be supporting the staff recommendation for a number of reasons. This is one of these votes that is a test of our collective leadership as members of City Council. No one likes the fact that we have to pay in part for a provincial responsibility, but those are the rules. And there are a lot of other hospitals, I believe 10, that are in the queue ready to get funding that have commitments from their host communities. And I don't want to put at risk this massive $2.1 billion investment into the city of Ottawa that will have a tremendous impact on the healthcare we receive and a tremendous positive impact on the economy. And I keep hearing, we can't make this decision because our term is almost over. Last time I checked, we were elected for 4 years, not 3.5 years. So we have to keep coming to work for the next 6 months. And this is a test of leadership. A quote I just got from my friend Jim Durrell. Many of you know Jim was one of our best mayors in recent memory. He sent this quote: "If we want to achieve anything in this world, we have to get used to the idea that not everyone will like us." Think about that for a minute. We can't please everyone all of the time. Some people are dragging out the location of the site. They're going to vote against it because they don't like the location. Well, the site has been chosen and work will soon begin on that site. And the notion of simply having the city run a lottery when there's been no consultation with the #1 lottery in our city, the CHEO lottery, it does a disservice to those other healthcare partners. Yes, this isn't technically a download. And yes, as one councillor pointed out, I'm proud to have been the minister that uploaded ODSP, Ontario Works, Ontario Drug Plan, prisoner transportation, court security. It saved the city of Ottawa about $121 million. And it was done on a principle basis. Those kinds of costs should be with the provincial government and provincial taxpayers, not the city of Ottawa. But as many of you have said, the rules for the city and the community contributing are very clear. And so I would encourage members to think beyond the parochial, think beyond you're unhappy with the site or that trees are going to be removed, which by the way, every tree removed, 5 will be replanted. So that's a pretty good return on investment. I'd encourage you to vote for Councillor Fleury's deferral motion of the Meehan motion so that staff can include that in their comprehensive review. And yes, the next council will make the final decision, but we have to lay the groundwork over the course of the next couple of months so that they can hit the ground running and we don't have another long debate that delays shovels getting in the ground. I believe that staff should be given that mandate. That's what's in the report. And I think we need to send a strong signal of support to both the community and the provincial government that we very much need and want a better, more modern trauma center that serves not just Ottawa, but all of Eastern Ontario, West Quebec, and Nunavut. So it's not really council's job to do the work of the foundation. The foundation decides they want to run a lottery or they want to have a bake sale or whatever else, then they'll do it. And many of us will go out and support it with our own funds. So the first item we're going to vote on is the referral motion. by Councillor Fleury, seconded by myself, that the me and Brogden motion be referred to the city treasurer for review as part of the tools that could help advance funding of this project, consulting with health hospital partners. Carried?
Carried.
The next is the main report. Yeas and nays, please, on staff recommendation to support the new Civic Hospital.
Councillor El-Shantiri.
Yes.
Councillor Hubley. Councillor Curry.
Yes.
Councillor Menard.
No.
Councillor Meehan.
No.
Councillor Luloff.
Yes.
Councillor Shirelli. Councillor King.
No.
Conseiller Fleury.
Oui.
Councillor Brockington.
No.
Councillor Deans.
No.
Councillor Leeper.
No.
Conseiller Cloutier.
Oui.
Councillor Kitts.
Yes.
Councillor Harder.
Yes.
Councillor DeRuse.
Yes.
Councillor Gower.
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
No.
Councillor Dudas.
Yes.
Councillor McKenney.
No.
Councillor Moffat.
Yes.
Councillor Tierney.
Yes.
Councillor Eglai.
Yes.
Mayor Watson.
Yes.
15 yeas, 8 nays.
Motion carries, and we wish the hospital the very best in their discussions with the province. One item was held, or a couple of items held. Councillor Leeper, you wanted us to hold item 4 on Roosevelt and Winston and Wilmot.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This item passed very quickly, or sorry, with overwhelming support at Planning Committee, and I'm under no illusions as to its fortune today. I do just want to point out, though, Kitchissippi Ward has grown by something, I believe, Mayor, in your speech on Lansdowne, you said 19% over the last 20 years, and it's set for even more explosive growth. The ward is projected to become so large that we had to hive off about 20% of its geography in order to ensure that it continues to be manageable. The development in question has been put to council as necessary in order to ensure that we have the density that we need near transit in Kitchissippi Ward. And, you know, I don't know how many actually saw it today, but without debate, we approved a 30-story tower that is something like 200 meters away from this development. We're not in any danger of not having enough density in Kitchissippi Ward. We're just not. In 2014, the OMB said that this building, after taking a look at its location near transit, after taking a look at the secondary plan for the neighborhood, should be limited to a mid-rise building, smack dab in the middle of a low-rise, ground-oriented neighborhood. This isn't on Scott Street. It's not on Churchill. It's not on Carling. It's on Winston and Roosevelt. It's the height on this one matters to the residents who live nearby. And it's not a question of density. It's not a question of getting moving on building more housing, which is something that the city has to do. 6 years ago, this developer could have built, with roughly the same density, an 8-story building and housing just about as many people, in keeping with the direction, the constraint that was imposed by the Ontario Municipal Board. I'm asking council to reject this application today, partly to give residents some confidence that as we go through rezoning our city to keep up with the official plan, that we're going to respect that there are constraints that are reasonable on growth, that secondary plans will mean something, that every rezoning isn't going to be approved simply because the developer is proposing more housing, that there is a balance to be achieved. This isn't a question of density. It's not a question of keeping Kitchissippi Ward a low density neighborhood. We've got the density. And that's going to continue and it's going to explode. And I'm going to continue to support buildings where they make sense, like the 30-story building that we just approved without debate. Colleagues, I urge you to reject this application. I'll leave it there. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Luloff.
Councillor Leeper, how close is this to transit?
It's immediately adjacent, kitty corner to the new Kitchissippi station. What I would ask people to keep in mind is that it's going to be luxury housing with virtually a 1-to-1 parking ratio. So they're asking for greater height on the basis that it's close to transit, right? They're asking to go from the mid-rise form to the high-rise form without increasing density in any really significant way that will make a difference in our city's housing, because they're next to Kitchissippi Station, and yet their parking garage will be stuffed with cars. And those cars are going to add further to the congestion with which we have to deal in Kitchissippi Ward. I absolutely understand the point that we want density near transit. 6 years ago, this developer could have chosen to put the same density in a mid-rise form next to transit, rather than having to go with a high-rise form with the same density next to transit. The height on this one matters. Residents would much prefer the mid-rise built form on a street that is not arterial. The question is not about how many people are we adding next to transit. There's no meaningful discussion to be had there. This discussion is about the built form. As I said in my comments, size matters.
Councillor Deans.
Thank you. And I just want to say I really agree with Councillor Leeper on this. I think in fairness to the community who went to the OMB, the proponent should be respecting our plans and the decision back in 2014 of the OMB. And I don't think there is any compelling reason to add stories onto this building when our plans say that this is the right height. And also, I think the other thing that council really needs to consider here is how we're dealing with planning applications when it comes to active transportation and our climate change priority. And I'm finding it very frustrating that we don't seem to have the tools or the ability or the will perhaps to compel proponents who are building significant builds in our community to do the right thing and add active transportation. And I think as a council, we really need to look at the outdated tools that we have that are allowing developers to come in and make significant builds in our community without contributing to our climate change goals and agenda, and not be adding the active transportation pieces that they need to these applications. So for that reason, I'm going to be supporting Councillor Leeper's perspective. Thank you.
Councillor Moffat.
Thank you. I just to touch on the size matters comment. So does shape, so does design, how the building relates to the people who will live there, how the building sits on the property in terms of its use of the landscape, and what amenity space can be built into the footprint of the building, into the open space in the building for the future people that will live there. We often talk about the impact of construction and buildings on those who live around it, but we don't ever hear from the people who will live in a building because they don't live there yet. But that matters too. It matters that the people who are going to live in this building have a decent design, and that they don't live in this short block of a building that takes up most of the footprint with no actual amenity space on the ground. How the taller buildings with the smaller footprint interact with the community in terms of the avenue through Winston to come up into the site, how that extends through. That doesn't happen with a shorter building. I've used the same argument for 900 Albert. It was a wall of 30-story towers versus a much taller building. I agree, it's 65 stories, but it's a better design than that shorter building. You get the same density. So this isn't a density urban boundary versus intensification argument. It's a design argument. It's about what's better on the site and how does it interact with the community, but also what about the people that will live there, and what are we designing our city to be? What type of housing are we building for people? If we're only worried about how other people see the building, but also a shorter building is not better from a community perspective because it is wider and because it takes up more space, and it impacts more of the sight lines, and it impacts more of the shadowing effect. Design matters. It mattered on a project a few years ago on Preston, where a building went from 35 stories, a great design, down to 30 stories and a not so great design. That building's currently being built. But we need to focus on that too. And we often hamstring ourselves because we create these policies where we box in creativity. We say you have a building cap, but you have a density target, and it doesn't fit together. So you stymie creativity in building design by doing that. And I feel that this isn't the 2013 official plan. We're looking to the future as to how we design the transit stations there. I think it's important that we have a good design building, but one that does take into consideration some of the comments of the OMB. It's not what it used to be in terms of what the original design was. It is lower, but it's a better interaction with the ground, and how the residents of this building will be able to utilize this site and the experience of them in this site for the long term, not just for the short term.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brock.
Thanks, Mayor. I completely agree with the comments from Councillor Moffat. If we don't believe this location is appropriate for this development beside a future LRT station, then what is an appropriate location for these types of buildings? I don't believe they're egregious. I do not believe they're out of place. I don't believe they're out of line within that corridor where we see much taller buildings. In fact, I believe at committee, I said we should be building bigger at this station. We as a city are talking about height and density around our LRT stations within a certain radius. And having looked at the design and acknowledging that there are concerns within the community, I believe that this is a reasonable fit. So I will be supporting the recommendation. I do want to see height and density around LRT stations. We want people to be able to make the switch from dependence on the automobile to having reliable transit corridor in their neighborhood, and this does. So we need to be bringing people across the city within a reasonable distance from these corridors, and we need to see height and we need to see density. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brongton. Councillor Menard, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Just some questions to staff. There's an OMB decision on this. Is it staff's anticipation that this will be appealed again back to the OLT?
Mr. Mayor, I have Mr. Doug James online, so he can respond to this question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, the community always has the right to appeal that. They may very well do so. It's up to them. We'll just have to wait and see till afterwards. But I just want to say that based on the policies in the official plan, and since 2013, and I had the privilege, I guess, or I was the planner at the time who went to the OMB there twice, actually. We have some new policies through OPA 150. A lot of them deal with transition. Making the staff recommendation on this proposal, we feel that the revised proposal actually fits within those policies and represents good planning going forward. But with respect to the community, we'll have to see if they do appeal it.
Okay. And this is not really a question of density, as we've been saying. It's about built forms. It's not about height at transit stations. It's about the density. The density is already, can be worked in, whether it's 8 or 12 or whatever it might be. I guess my vote on this will weigh on the official plan. So what is we just passed an official plan here. It's not in force yet, but what does the new official plan say? Did it absorb the plan, the secondary plan for this area? And that's what the official plan says. If someone on staff can just provide clarity for that.
Yes, well, Mr. Mayor, we have the Richmond Road Westboro secondary plan that is current one, and it also has been, as Councilor Bernard had said, has been put into the new official plan as well, and that's part of the overall direction, part of the report that was written by council. It satisfies the direction in the new official plan. The amendment that is before council for the official plan amendment deals with the secondary plan to go from the current height up to 12 stories. And that, of course, is based on satisfying the policies that have been approved by council to allow this development. But the secondary plan is itself being put into the new official plan. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that's helpful. We have to do better because we have a new official plan we've just approved. We want that to be approved by the minister or by new provincial government that comes in. We need a publicly planned city, right? We want a publicly planned city, not a privately planned city. And too often we see this. We just minted a new official plan and it goes through very clearly what should be here and what shouldn't. That said, I don't like the parking here, but I don't see a ton of other concerns besides the parking and a bit of the neighbors' concerns around height. The density is good. The transit is good. The design looks fair. So there's a lot of things here that I think are okay as well, but for a signal for next term of council, we have to get to a point where we're publicly planning our city and abiding by the plans we've just put in place in the new official plan, or we will continue with the constant fights that we've got going where there's not clarity for people on what they can and cannot build in certain locations. So I'll leave it there, Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Meehan, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Just following up on what Councillor Moffat was saying about the built form matters. With more stories, I would assume that there's going to be a smaller footprint on this property. With that smaller footprint, what kind of use of the additional space, what will they be using additional space? How will that be an asset to the community?
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I may, the zoning that's there now would allow up to, I think it's a 60% lot coverage, and they're 48. And I think, as Councillor Moffat had mentioned earlier, there's going to be, through the site plan, there will be the ability of the public to go through here through an easement to traverse across the site, but it will be sort of open space on site for the people who are going to live there, but also for people of the community to travel through, which it would be more difficult to achieve under the current zoning with a longer bar slab type of building.
So there would be a benefit to all the community?
It would be, yes, Mr. Mayor, it would be a benefit to the community from the south, going north towards the transit and the ability to use the site. And that's something came up in 2013, 2014, but it will continue to be carried forward with this proposal.
So what is the nearest, is there a park? Is there a green space close to this area?
Now, in terms of open space, there is there's the city's MUP along there, also that runs east-west. There is actually a city lot on the other side of 342 Roosevelt, which is green space. I think it might be being used right now with respect to the construction of the LRT extension. But just going through my mind's eye there, that would be the biggest. It's not a formal park, but it's a city-owned lot that's green space.
Okay, I want to thank you for that. So it is possible at this council to have civilized debate, whether we are on opposing issues, opposing sides. It's good to know. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else wish to speak to the report? I'll just offer a very brief comment. We all talk a good tale about transit-oriented development, putting transit and greater density around transit stations. It's good for the environment, good for the transit system, good for the economy. And yet every once in a while, a project comes in, this one particularly, I think of the Trailhead project, the Trailhead building that members of the community and the ward councillor opposed, yet it was literally across the street from the Westboro station. So if we're serious about transit-oriented development, these are the low-hanging fruit options, really, when it comes to supporting it, because we want to have a density around those transit stations. We want to have 15-minute neighborhoods. I think that project where Trailhead is great. The Farm Boy, I go there quite often. There's a daycare center, a couple of office towers. It has turned into be a very nice community, which will be even nicer and more efficient when the train stops at the Westboro station. So I'd encourage members to support staff on this and vote for the staff report. So I think we'll call yeas and nays because there are a number of people that have dissented.
Councillor El Shantiri. Councillor Hubley. Yes. Councillor Curry.
Yes.
Councillor Menard.
Yes.
Councillor Meehan.
Yes.
Councillor Luloff.
Oui.
Councillor Shirelli.
Yes.
Councillor King.
No.
Conseiller Fleury.
Oui.
Councillor Brockington.
Yes.
Councillor Deans.
No.
Councillor Leeper.
No.
Conseiller Cloutier.
Oui.
Councillor Kitts.
Yes.
Councillor Harder.
Yes.
Councillor Derues.
Yes.
Councillor Gower.
Yes.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Yes.
Councillor Dudas.
Yes.
Councillor McKenney.
Yes.
Councillor Moffat.
Yes.
Councillor Tierney.
Yes.
Councillor Eglai.
Yes.
Mayor Watson.
Yes.
21 yeas, 3 nays.
Okay, next item that was held was moving to sustainable care of our public spaces. I believe Councillor Brockington, did I have it right that you had a question? Oh, sorry, Councillor King, I had an R there. It was Riley or Rolfe.
No problem. Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make a comment. As we know, colleagues, the city's right away, the green space between the road and the property line or sidewalk, otherwise known as the boulevard, can be the perfect spot for a garden. Boulevard gardens beautify our roadsides, and well-chosen non-invasive plants that are designed to retain moisture can reduce water usage and therefore the need to use mowers and fertilizer. Introducing native and diverse plant species can also improve the overall health of our city's ecosystem. For these reasons, I'm very pleased to have worked very cooperatively and constructively with Councillor Dudas to bring forward the motion that is before you. I also would like to thank all the people who worked hard in my community over the last few months to help bring this motion forward. There have been many iterations of this motion, and city staff were collaborative and receptive to all the feedback from my office, as well as from Councillor Dudas. I also specifically want to thank the many residents in Rideau Rockcliffe, as well as who reached out to me to really get this process started, as well as organizations including Our Kids Ottawa Gatineau, as well as the Ottawa South Eco Action Network. The quality of the research they provided and the patience with this process, not to mention their excellent questions every step of the way, were invaluable to relatively quickly turn around to see the quick turnaround on this file that we've seen. As Councillor Dudas noted when introducing this motion at last month's Transportation Committee meeting, residents who have been interested in gardening boulevards or right-of-ways have unfortunately run afoul of our existing bylaws or have had issues concerning liability or even experienced conflict with their neighbors because there has been no clear process for both city staff or for residents to follow in regards to what is permissible. I myself witnessed such a scenario in one of my communities where a bylaw infringement notice for a resident was issued for a boulevard garden last summer. Working with city staff and neighbors, we were able to resolve this issue. But this motion works to redress these challenges and respond to community concerns to strengthen our city's policies in order to recognize the value of urban greening, naturalization, protection of biodiversity, and respect for the historical context of our land. Many residents have reached out to us and have rightly noted that gardens act as a carbon sequestration tool as the deeper roots of native plants absorb significant more carbon than grass. Residents have also correctly told us that naturalization of the right-of-way helps create habitats. Gardens provide water retention. Further, some communities do not have much green space other than boulevards. And so the planting of gardens could be a step towards improving current inequitable access to green space in our city. As a consequence of all of these benefits, as well as ensuring the city better align our policies with the climate change master plan, I'm pleased to see this motion before us for consideration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Merci, Conseiller King. On the motion, carried. Adopted.
Carried.
So our next item is, it was held, this one's by Councillor Brockington, the Carlington North Veterans Housing Heritage Study. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I simply want to extend my courtesies on this matter to heritage staff. This is a great example of when you engage the community and you include them as part of the process and you have robust consultation, 2 full rounds of consultation, that we get the result that we have today, where the community is overwhelmingly in support of the recommendations that we first heard at the Subcommittee on Built Heritage and Planning Committee. History in North Carlington goes back to the end of the Second World War, when this community in particular was developed. 400 veterans homes for veterans and those who supported the war effort here at home. And there's a great pride and respect in this community that acknowledges these contributions. And I very much support the staff recommendations before us today that will see a recognition of this heritage and history in this community. And we will note it publicly through either street sign blades or plaque or other means. There's also a recommendation to look at potentially, for heritage purposes, designating a park and a nearby church. I fully support those recommendations as well. And I do appreciate the fact that this new character study will be looked at after 3 years, that we will come back after 3 years and see if there needs to be any modifications or tweaks. All this to say, thanks again to heritage staff for their work on this file, and the community supports the recommendations before us. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. On the report, Barry.
Mayor, just on the bulk consent agenda, my apologies. I just chatted with the clerk. There was 2 items there I wanted to dissent on, and I missed it. With your will, be very helpful. The Brownfield grant application J and the Brownfield grant application K. It's a Brownfield grant application to development companies.
Sorry, it was J and
K on the bulk consent.
Okay, so we haven't passed the bulk consent, so that's fine.
Oh.
So on the bulk consent, we have a replacement for, or an addition rather, for N. Councillor Gower, I believe you have N. We'll put it up on the screen. This is adding to item N. It was something left off at the staff level.
That's correct. We're adding a map. So whereas with respect to document 5 of the report, the map was inadvertently not included in the attachment. And whereas the report seeks to amend the Leitrim Community Design Plan to designate 2960 Leitrim Road and 1 unaddressed parcel as general urban pursuant to document 5, therefore be it resolved that with respect to the report, Council revised document 5 to include the enclosed map. Therefore be it further resolved that there be no further notice pursuant to section 3417 of the Planning Act.
Okay. Thank you on that. Carried. And did anyone else hold anything from bulk consent? I don't believe so. So Councillor, we've recorded Councillor Menard's dissents on the bulk consent agenda as amended. It's carried.
Carried.
All right, next, disposition of items approved by committees under delegated authority suite à donner des articles ratifiés par les comités en vertu de pouvoirs délégués. Received. Motion to adopt reports, motion portant adoption de rapport. Councillor Kitts, please.
Thank you. That Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Report 30, Finance and Economic Development Committee Report 37, Planning Committee Report 60, Transportation Committee Report 28, and the report from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for items subject to the Planning Act, explanation requirements at the City Council meeting of April 27th, 2022, be received and adopted as amended.
Carried. Adopté. Motions of which notice have been previously given. Motion dont avis a été donné entièrement. Councillor Brockington, seconded by Councillor Tierney, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion before council this morning, in essence, asks for a temporary prohibition of driving school vehicles on 3 streets in the Hunt Club community. They are Lilico, Bennett, and Aaron. And the rationale for this is the MTO, in order to address a backlog of requests for driving tests due to COVID, some of the restrictions that COVID had, opened temporary offices in 3 locations across Ontario, including in Ottawa. So at 3310 McCarthy Road in Riverward, there is a temporary MTO office that's been opened. We have, as a council, historically addressed some chronic problems in neighborhoods that abut permanent MTO offices. One is on Canatech and the other is on Walkley Road. And past councils, as I said, have taken action to prohibit driving school vehicles in the immediate communities from these permanent MTO offices, because as you might imagine, the MTO testers use these immediate communities to have those driving tests. And that causes a number of issues that the council's tried to address in the past. So what I'm asking colleagues today to do is to pass a temporary prohibition of these 3 streets. These are residential in nature. They're not arterials. They're not collectors. This is where families have raised issues with the proliferation of driving school vehicles. And as a result, Drive Test has said, no worries, we will simply amend the test routes that are used in the community and have support for this request. When the temporary office closes, which is expected later this month, Part 2 of this motion says we'll repeal the bylaw amendment that we are passing today. So this is not asked to be a permanent prohibition, simply as long as the temporary office is open. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak to the item? On the motion, carried. Adopté. Next motion is by Councillor Cloutier, appuyé par Councillor King.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I introduced the motion on May, at the end of April. It was crafted with staff, particularly commemorative tree and commemorative naming at the request of the Alta Vista Community Association and the Green Space Stewardship Committee. Et je remercie sincèrement les membres de la communauté qui ont chapeauté cette initiative.
Thank you so much for everyone who supported this initiative.
The city's found a new location nearby, a new tree, worked with dedicated neighbors to update this important commemoration of the protection of green space in Grasshopper Hill Park. Et puis, si adopté, je prends l'occasion de vous inviter tous cet automne pour le dévoilement et de visiter Grasshopper Hill Park.
I would invite you to come to this fall.
Grasshopper Hill Park and enjoy Alta Vista's green spaces. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Merci. On the motion, carried. Adopté. Motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure. Motion item, first one rather is Councillor McKenney, seconded by Councillor King. Motion to approach to building stabilization for Somerset House. Probably our worst address for a landlord or owner in the entire city. On suspension, carried. Councillor McKenney.
Thank you. I'll read it into the record. Whereas council has been monitoring the status of the building located at 352 Somerset Street West, known as Somerset House. And whereas the general manager of planning, real estate and economic development, together with the chief building official and the director of bylaw and regulatory services, have confirmed they have the authority under the Building Code Act and the Property Standard Bylaw and are prepared to use this authority to step in to secure the retention and conservation of the Somerset House structure. And whereas the cost of any work ordered by the chief building official and the director of bylaw and regulatory services can and would be recovered from the property owner, and whereas the preservation of the structure has been a priority of the Built Heritage Subcommittee, therefore be it resolved that council direct heritage planning staff to bring a report to update Built Heritage Subcommittee at its next meeting planned for June 20th, 2022 on the status of the building, and be it further resolved that council direct the general manager of planning, real estate and economic development to work with the chief building official and director of bylaw and regulatory services to stabilize and secure the retention and conservation of the Somerset House structure, and that the costs of any work done be recovered from the property owner. If I could, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure everyone here is quite familiar with Somerset House, but I just want to reiterate that as a city, we have given this property owner many, many chances over the years. We've engaged in meaningful dialogue to encourage him to redevelop this site. And he has never taken any meaningful action, unless, of course, you include his demolition of portions of the building. We now have outstanding building code orders that are related to the structural integrity of this building and property standards order that are related to the heritage attributes of the building. We've invested significant staff time into this file and are only seeing the ongoing deterioration of this building. And while the owner, has made, applications over the years and apparently is discussing another new application, none have ever been acted on. None have ever been serious. So this is allowing the city to go in and stabilize this building, repair it, and take the action that we need to ensure that we don't lose this building that has been around for over 100 years and is on one of the busiest corners of our downtown and makes up part of the Centertown Heritage Conservation District. So it's, we really have exhausted all other tools. We've tried, I've been working on this for 8 years. We have very few tools. And this is one that I think we need to do to ensure that the work that is needed is finally undertaken. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just a brief comment. This has to be the ugliest blight on our landscape in the entire city. And Mr. Q, who owns this, has to be among the top 1 terrible building owners in all of Ottawa. It's in our downtown core. He's allowed it to deteriorate. Staff have spent enormous amount of time and effort. He seems to be able to just meet deadlines, just pay the taxes. And we're frustrated, and the residents are frustrated to have this eyesore in the middle of our central city. So hopefully, Mr. Q gets word of this motion and gets word of these remarks, and he comes back to City Hall and acts as a responsible citizen and fix his damn building once and for all. It has the potential to be such a beautiful building. The red brick and the cornice work, the woodwork around the windows, and it had such a great history as the old Somerset Hotel. I remember, I think Edgar Mitchell was the general manager, Nancy's ex, and it had such great potential, and he's allowed it to deteriorate. And I think he wants us, to have the building fall down. So he has no choice but to tear it down, which would be a shame. So to Mr. Q and his investors, show a little pride in your city and one of our important streets in the nation's capital, and fix the building. On the motion, carried. Next is a motion by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Fleury, which is 387 Vincent Massey Avenue demolition on suspension. Carried. Councillor King, floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is just simply a motion for demolition control at a OCH property located in the Overbrook neighborhood. There was a fire there February 26th. There were no injuries reported, and that family has been rehoused by OCH within the Overbrook community. There is no impact or change on the family's rent. Insurance, however, would cover the cost of repair, estimated at approximately $200,000 minus a $50,000 deductible. However, for public safety reasons, OCH is requesting relief from demolition control in order to move forward with the demolition of the property. The sooner the demolition, the better for life safety reasons. The estimated demolition cost is $50,000. The strategy is to allocate the $50,000 otherwise used as a deductible towards the cost of the demolition instead. The balance of the insurance claim after the deductible will go towards the support of replacing the lost unit, and with approval from council lifting demolition control, demolition can proceed. So I thank you so much for your support. We want to ensure that OCH just moves forward with creating more investments in the Overbrook community.
Anyone else on the motion? Carried. Adopté. Any other motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure? Notice the motion for consideration of subsequent meeting avec motion pour examen en réunion subséquente. Councillor Luloff, seconded by Councillor Kitts, on the splash effects.
Thank you. If anyone has any questions on this over the course of the next 2 weeks, please reach out. I'd be glad to get you in touch with the company or answer any questions that you might have. So I'll read this into the record. Whereas Splash Effects Water Parks is an inflatable water playground experience that values safety, inclusion, sustainability, laughter, and learning through action. And whereas Splash Effects has approached the city to determine a suitable location to establish an inflatable water park in Ottawa. Whereas Splash Effects identified an area on the Ottawa River off of Petrie Island Beach as a possible location to pilot this concept for the summer of 2022 and 2023. Whereas the water park is intended to operate 7 days a week from 9:30 a.m. to 7 p.m., except for inclement weather, poor water quality, or days and times directed by the City of Ottawa. And whereas the capacity of the water park cannot exceed 200 individuals, and Splash Effects will have a staff of 30 to 35 team members fully certified with first aid, CPR, and national life-saving certification, whereas the water park operation will be supervised 24 hours a day, and Splash Effects will have general liability insurance policy with the City of Ottawa as co-insured for an amount to the satisfaction of the city's insurance services. And whereas Splash Effects has agreed to implement a transportation plan that encourages participants to use public transportation by providing ticket price incentives for those who do. And whereas a 30-day circulation of Splash Effects application has commenced with Transport Canada for authorization to install the inflatable attraction in the Ottawa River at this location. And whereas it is anticipated that Transport Canada approval will be given on June 9th, 2022, whereas Splash Effects will require a dedicated space on the waterfront to receive clients and to deploy staff. Therefore, be it resolved that Council waive Section 2.3 of the Disposal of Real Property Policy, requiring the city to notify the public to solicit offers for the subject property. And be it further resolved that should Transport Canada approve Splash Effects application, Council delegate authority to the Director, Corporate Real Estate Office to negotiate, conclude, and execute and amend on behalf of the city a license of occupation agreement for an area and an annual time period to be negotiated with a term up to 2 years for the Splash Effects inflatable water park operation at 795 Tweddle Road, Petrie Island Beach. I'll have more to say about this next week. That was a very long motion. I'll be quiet now. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Luloff. Next notice of motion is by Councillor Tierney, seconded by myself. Naming of Mark Bingham Field at Ken Steele Park. Councillor Tierney, please.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whereas in August 2022, Ottawa will be hosting the Bingham Cup, the largest LGBTQ2S+ inclusive rugby competition with over 1,500 participants, coaches, officials, and guests coming to the national capital from around the world Whereas the Bingham Cup is named after Mark Bingham, a pioneer of inclusive rugby who was a passenger on United Airlines Flight 93 on September 11th, 2001, and who, along with other brave passengers, formed a plan to retake the plane from hijackers that led to the effort resulting in the crash in Pennsylvania rather than the building in Washington, D.C., whereas the Bingham Cup Organizing Committee has dedicated a portion of the Bingham Cup operating budget towards a legacy investment that will see the field at Ken Steele Park be graded and leveled and enhanced for multi-sports infrastructure that will be installed to the benefits of soccer, rugby clubs for years to come, including the Ottawa Wolves Inclusive Rugby Club. Therefore, be resolved that the field at Ken Steele Park be known henceforth as Mark Bingham Field as part of the legacy project of the Bingham Cup in Ottawa. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Next is a motion by Councillor Leeper, seconded by Councillor Luloff, recognition for Ottawa musician, volunteer and philanthropist Les Emerson. Councillor.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I won't read the full motion, but I hope that people will take a look at it. On May 26, family and friends of Les Emerson will gather at the Bronson Center for a tribute evening of storytelling and music. And I'm really pleased to say that Councillor Harder has worked with Kaivan Communities to ensure that one of the main roads in new roads in Barhaven will be named for Les Emerson. We lost him too soon in December 2021. I'll be bringing a motion to our next meeting at which it will be resolved that Ottawa City Council recognize the unique, prolific, and generous contributions that Les Emerson has made in Ottawa and around the world, and the role he will continue to play as a model and inspiration to all of Ottawa's musicians today and in future.
Great. I want to thank you, Councillor, for moving the motion, and Councillor Harder for her work behind the scenes, and Councillor Luloff, another musician, for supporting this. And we'll have a discussion next meeting. But I also want to thank Michael O'Byrne, formerly of CTV. He first brought the idea to me, and I'm glad to see it's moved through the system so quickly. And I know many people will know the music signs when he was with the 5-man electrical band. Most people didn't realize he was an Ottawa resident. So it's nice that he's getting this recognition, and for his family and his fans. So thank you for doing that. Next is Councillor Fleury, second by Councillor Luloff, 2022 National Health and Fitness Day. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has become an annual tradition here at Council to promote the National Health and Fitness Day locally with a number of initiatives that we can do in city facilities. It's the Try It and Love It program. So I'll read the therefore be it resolved if you're okay with that. So therefore be it resolved that Council declares Saturday, June 4th, 2022 to be National Health and Fitness Day in Ottawa. Be it further resolved that City Council approved that the city offers 2-for-1 public swimming at city operated facility swimming pools, and 2-for-1 admission at city operated weight and cardio rooms, as well as free virtual Zumba classes and a family outdoor activity sheet on Saturday, June 4th, 2022, in recognition of the 2022 National Health and Fitness Day here in Ottawa.
Okay, thank you. Notice of intent, avis d'intention, notice of intent from the Integrity Commissioner, submit the 2022 midterm report for consideration at the City Council meeting of May 25th. And we have one more notice. Councillor Kavanaugh, seconded by Councillor Eglai, on prohibition of nuclear weapons.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a rather long motion, about the length of a War and Peace, but it's all about ban the bombs. And I'll read the therefores. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Ottawa is deeply concerned about the grave threat of nuclear weapons posed to communities throughout the world. We firmly believe that our residents have the right to live in a world free from threat. Any use of nuclear weapons, whether deliberate or accidental, would have catastrophic, far-reaching, and long-lasting consequences for people and environment. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Ottawa join with other Canadian cities who have signed on to the city's appeal and support the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons, and call on our governments to sign and ratify it. Thank you.
Okay, we'll discuss that at the next meeting. Motion to introduce bylaws, motion portant présentation de règlement. Conseillère Kitts, s'il vous plaît.
Que les règlements énumérés à l'ordre du
That the
jour
bylaws on the agenda under motion to introduce bylaws, 3 readings, be read and passed.
Adopté, carried. A confirmation bylaw, règlement de gratification. Conseillère Kitts, s'il vous plaît.
Conseillère Kitts.
The following bylaw be read and passed to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of May 11th, 2022.
Carried, adopté. Any written inquiries, Madam Clerk? Adjournment, Councillor Kitts.
Que les délibérations du Conseil du 11 mai 2022 soient ajournées.
That the May 11 council meeting be raised.